So Marjorie Taylor Greene is attempting to isolate the United States from the rest of the world yet again. Previously, she tried to cut funding to Ukraine, and it failed embarrassingly with a vote of 341 against her to 89 for. Today, she has filed another amendment, going back for round two, this time trying to cut funding for NATO. This nonsense on the global stage that Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz and others put forward only helps Russia and only helps Vladimir Putin. It undermines the cause for good here. Here's a small clip showing the response to the amendment from Representative Jerry Connolly.
The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I thank my friend and I thank the chair. Americans are not fighting and dying in Ukraine. Ukrainians are. And all they ask of the great country they admire and they want to emulate is that we help with equipment and training. Putin benefits from this amendment. Putin, a sociopath who is engaged in the most depraved behavior in our lifetimes, killing innocent men and women, targeting hospitals, targeting schools, showing no restraint. This Congress must stand with Ukraine. This Congress can never be seen as Putin's enabler. And that is what this amendment does. That's what's behind it. The author of this amendment has already said she wants to give zero to Ukraine. So we know the motivation behind the amendment. Let's reject it. Let's stand with Ukraine. And let's make sure Putin gets that message loud and strong with a forceful vote here on the floor of the House of Representatives. I yield back.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Republican in name only, also known as a rhino. And I know MAGA and the Tea Party somewhat co-opted that term, and they use it to attack moderate, sane Republicans with good foreign policy initiatives. But the reality is Matt Gaetz, Green, Boebert, Trump, etc., they're all MAGA party. They are not GOP, at least in the foreign policy realm, because the GOP does not agree with what these various MAGA party members are saying. They don't agree even historically. How do I know this? Well, there's 70 years of established anti-isolationist Republican policy and Republican speeches that precedes the Trump era and that of his minions. For instance, Eisenhower. How and where can there be a retreat from this unity? So this quote, before I get into it, is Eisenhower is talking about the United States being a part of the United Nations and those that are attacking him for attacking Eisenhower for being a part of the United Nations. So he goes on, he says, how and where can there be a retreat from this unity? Talking about the unity of the United Nations. Surrender Asia? Would that would mean leaving a vast portion of the population of the entire world to be mobilized by the forces of aggression. Surrender Europe? That would mean more than doubling the industrial power of those same forces. Who is there who thinks that the strength of America is so great, its burden so easy, its future so secure, that it could make so generous a gift to those challenging our very lives? And it is very important. There is no such thing as partial unity. That is a contradiction in terms. And this is obviously Eisenhower talking about remaining united in the United Nations and keeping the U.S. in that body. Eisenhower not your thing? How about Ronald Reagan? We in America have learned bitter lessons from 2 world wars. It is better to be here ready to protect the peace than to take blind shelter across the sea, rushing to respond only after freedom is lost. We've learned that isolationism never was and never will be an acceptable response to tyrannical governments with an expansionist intent. Reagan gave that speech on the beaches of Normandy on the anniversary, talking to his European partners. George H.W. Bush, who was Reagan's vice president and then president himself, said, I am confident that we will meet this challenge as we have so many times before. In this speech, actually, he's talking about uniting Europe and Russia after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But he said, I am confident we will meet this challenge as we have so many times before. But we cannot if we retreat into isolationism. We will only succeed in this interconnected world by continuing to lead the fight for free people and free and fair trade. A free and prosperous global economy is essential for America's prosperity. That means jobs and economic growth right here at home. George W. Bush, H.W.'s son, also president if you didn't know. America is indispensable for the world, and the dangers of isolation loom. The price of greatness is responsibilities. One cannot rise to be, in many ways, the leading community in the civilized world without being involved in its problems, without being convulsed by its agonies and inspired by its causes. The people in the United States cannot escape the world's responsibilities. So you can see basically every major Republican president since, World War II has been non-isolationist. That is the Republican platform, period. So when you see people like Boebert saying that the Republicans are supporting isolationism, that is 100% not true. The majority of Republicans, in fact, the last poll I saw was like 71% of even Republicans support continuing to provide aid to Ukraine. It is not Republican policy, despite what Matt Gaetz and Boebert and Green say. America has not been an isolationist country for the last century plus. It is bad policy for America to abandon the rest of the world simply because, from an economic and military standpoint, we're really the only country that can abandon the rest of the world and maintain some semblance of capability. The bottom line is the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.